is a Bulldog Radio podcast.
The Ferris State Bulldogs have upset the nation's #2 ranked team. Wide open! Taylor is going to take this one to the house! Touchdown Bulldogs!
It's the MVSP Season 4, Episode 37. What an episode we have on deck for you guys today. A lot of stuff went down in Ferris Athletics, but before we get into it, happy birthday, Brandon.
Aw, thanks, Joe.
February 6th, man. You're 22 years old. Wild.
Yeah, I'm getting old.
How does it feel?
It feels like I'm 1 year closer to paying insurance. That's really how
tough,
it
man.
feels.
Yeah,
So,
it's tough.
But also, happy birthday, Quentin Zinger as well.
Yeah, another Ferris guy. My
Q's birthday
roommate.
today. Yeah, so
Ferris Athletic guy.
yeah, we should have him in the studio also one of these times. Q, if you're listening, we got a seat for you.
I ain't gonna lie, Q does not listen to this show.
Aw, that's unfortunate.
Maybe I'll have to have him start. I'll say, hey, listen to this episode.
Yeah, that would be cool if you did. But that's the way to start it up. You shout him out on the show. And
Absolutely.
there you go. So,
Absolutely.
great interview in store with you. We brought Noah Giesbrecht, one of the nation's best goaltenders, stopped by the show to talk about their epic weekend at Bowling Green, which ended in style. We'll get through all that, as well as Ferris basketball's trip across the pond. Tennis started off the season at home. We'll break that down, as well as controversial trades going down in the NBA. We'll break that all down. But first, without further ado,
Let's swing into the interview.
joining us now in studio, Ferris State hockey goaltender Noah Giesbrecht stopped by. Noah, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, thanks so much for coming on. Huge 5 points last weekend for you coming against Bowling Green. You know, home ice is in the hunt for the playoffs. Can you guys just talk about what was going on through practice last week to prepare for such a big weekend?
Yeah, I think after we had Minnesota State, we definitely spent a little bit of time battling this week. Led into a well-fitted series for Bowling Green and ended up getting the job done. So it was good.
For sure.
Yeah, and we saw obviously the highlights from especially the Saturday game, the nightcap, the shootout. You left with a very beautiful celebration at the end, giving a bow to the student section. I mean, how big of that game was it for you guys emotionally to come out in a huge, really gritty last game, and especially to get the sweep overall on the weekend?
Yeah, that it was huge at the end of the day. I mean, it was a battle of a series right to the end and the final buzzer, and the shootout kind of topped it off. And I think all the guys felt that it was a big weekend for us, and just confidence boost going into this next one with Bemidji coming up here.
Yeah, and that clip of you at the shootout at the end giving the bow, it's gone pretty viral across a few accounts on Instagram, TikTok, and stuff. You know, was that celebration pre-planned, or was that more of a spur of the moment, like made the save, got to turn around and give them the business?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was kind of a spur of the moment. They were just so loud all weekend. They were giving it to us. We were giving it back. And then, yeah, it was just spur of the moment. I didn't really know I even really did it at the end until I saw a video. And I was watching. I'm like, oh, I guess it worked out. But, yeah.
When it comes to like just overall, I mean, you're down there, obviously the student section behind you. The glass is in the way. But how much of that stuff do you actually hear? Because I know, like, especially at Ferris's rink, it's very, very close as opposed to some other venues, it's far away. How much of that stuff do you hear? And, like, do you block it out as much, or does the pane of glass really take care of that?
No, you definitely hear it. They're one of the loudest. Apparently, they're always loud. They have a great student section. I don't hear it too much while I'm playing, but sometimes I choose to kind of tune in and see what they're saying. It's kind of funny sometimes what they come up with, but
yeah, get the juices flowing a little bit.
Get the juices flowing, kind of just be in the present and enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. And especially last year, you came in halfway through this season, you transferred from the University of Windsor. You know, what was that process like of transferring, coming into this team? And then also what's the biggest difference that you found between Canadian and American universities?
Yeah, it was a big transition. Just getting to know a whole new group of guys. Definitely was tough, but they welcomed me with open arms here, and very thankful for the opportunity. And it's been a change, but it's been nice to be here for a while and get a fresh season under the belt.
Yeah, and obviously being with Logan and a lot of the other goaltenders, especially from last year with Roney and some of those guys. I mean, what's been the interaction with you guys being in that goalie group and going through drills and just having those guys really come in and welcome you as a freshman last year?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, me and Steiny are pretty tight. We're good friends off the ice and on the ice, and he's a great goalie too. I can take something out of his game. He takes something out of mine. It's a friendly competition, and it makes both of us better at the end of the day. So can't say enough good things. And
Yeah, and there's been some pretty great games that you've been able to play so far this season, especially like GLI and stuff like that. What have been some of those ones that have been stuck out to you so far with some of those performances on the personal level and just being able to be a part of some of those atmospheres and some of those games?
Yeah, I mean the GLI against Michigan State was crazy. That was a cool opportunity that we got, and then Bowling Green again. That was one of the top ones too. Just being able to sweep them in their own barn and the emotions were flying on both sides of the ring. So it was pretty cool. GLI too. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want to play in the big barn? I mean, that's a dream come true, man. But when it comes to your skill set, no, obviously I'm sure there's a lot of people that could try to analyze and see, yeah, this strength is this or weakness is this. What do you think is your strongest, real strong suit that has made you such a really good goaltender this year?
I think my size, just being able to play with my size and kind of know in the boundaries, play in between the posts kind of thing. Just try to emphasize on and just being calm. Just nothing really bothers me and just play the game of hockey and have fun with it. So.
Yeah, and being like so tall, like did you kind of have a problem with that kind of growing up with a growth spurt or anything like that, trying to just get in control of your body and stuff like that when it was changing or no?
Yeah, I was a late bloomer, so I didn't grow until maybe grade 11, grade 12. I was always kind of short. And then, it kind of hit me after high school. So I was a late bloomer, definitely. And still adjusting to it now. And I know I can work on it more and perfect it a little bit better. So.
When you started playing hockey, first of all, when did you start? And then did you start as necessarily as a skater or have you always been in between the posts?
Yeah, in Canada we start early, so we're on the ice, we're on the ponds at like 4 years old. So I've always been I've always wanted to play player and all that, but my dad didn't want me to be a goalie, but ended up getting in there and never looked back. So my brother was wanting to be a goalie too, but my dad didn't let him, so he's a player now.
Was that kind of like the goalie was injured one of those days and you had to step in, or was that?
No, I don't. I think I just want to be on the ice longer. That's what I always ask my dad why he let me go goalie. But yeah, apparently I just want to be on the ice a little bit longer than everyone else. So.
Oh, interesting. Is there an NHL tender that you're like, man, this is the guy that I watch film on. This is the guy I want to be like, or do you kind of take and roll with a couple other guys, take one of this, take someone else's from this or whatever like that?
I think in Canada, like growing up, if you're a goalie, you're looking at Carey Price. Carey Price is a huge idol for all of us. Just watching him and everyone tries to influence their game off him. So he's a good role model on and off the ice. So
right on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, especially like with secondary school and like high school and stuff like that for Canada, is there like high school teams or is that kind of more like you play for your city type deal?
Yeah, it's completely different in Canada. We play we have hockey academies. So you guys have like these huge football schools. Like we have nothing like that back home. It's all about hockey and it's kind of like the vice versa. Like football is our hockey. I don't even know. I was telling the boys when we went to BG, they have that huge stadium over there. I'm like, that's crazy. Like I couldn't stop looking at it. And then like, I don't even know where we'd go to find a football stadium back home like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Outside of hockey being that predominant sport and that's the number one thing, what's been like the biggest difference that you found just being overall as a student athlete, both in Canada and now in the US? What's been the biggest difference between the two?
Honestly, it's pretty similar, the difference between the two schoolings. I was all online. We had that COVID year when I was there, so I didn't really get to experience Canadian university. And then here was my first university class, so never really went to a class in university in Canada. I'm
sure there's probably not a gorgeous place like the Rock in Canada, potentially at Windsor. Is there anything close to that?
I never got to experience anything. I didn't even set foot on campus.
Wow. Really?
That's tough.
That's wild.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. And especially like transferring in, like, was Daniels the first one to reach out or did you kind of just enter the portal and kind of put your name out there for different coaches to look at you?
Yeah, I think I got eligible. I wasn't eligible in high school because we was missing credits in Canada courses. And then once I got eligible, there was a few that reached out and I was talking to Coach Sensor about it and we found a way and made it work second semester.
For sure.
Yeah. And what was the biggest thing that you found when you first joined the team? Obviously after that holiday break, you get on the ice for the first day of practice. What was the interaction like with the guys and really that first week were you able just to meet them and really kind of becoming that glue with this team?
Yeah, it was nice to get out of the way. I knew probably a month prior it was going to happen. So it was just, when and where. So it was nice to get on the ice the first time and then get out of the way. And then we headed over to Mankato. So it's good, a little eye opener for us.
Yeah, for sure. And did you hear much about Ferris State before? Or is Canadian college hockey like you don't really pay too much attention to NCAA or something like that?
We'd pay attention to it. I definitely have heard of Ferris before. I know a couple of the boys are from Michigan that were on my Windsor team. So I asked them about it and they all had good things to say about the hockey program. So it was I knew a little bit coming in. So
for sure.
Yeah, when it comes to the overall style of game, I know we talked to Roney a little while back about his experience playing Finnish and his affairs to American. Is there a difference between Canada and American that maybe some people might just be overlooking?
The hockey wise of it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it. It's just we have NCAA over here. Back home, it's major junior. So if you go major junior, you can't go NCAA. It's always up in the air. We always battle with it with American guys on the team, which one's better. So it's an ongoing dispute, but it's very similar.
Yeah, style of play very similar, same pace. Yeah,
same style of hockey.
Gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bemidji's coming to town this week. I mean, what's been the talks between the team kind of getting ready for? I know it's Monday today, but I mean, in a couple of short days, you're going to have the Beavers at home ice. So what's the conversations been happening, especially in practice?
Yeah, I mean, we got the day off today to kind of rest the bodies and get them ready for a big weekend here. But we've had success against them. I think we got 4 to 6 last time we went to Bemidji. They're a good team though, so we'll have our hands full this weekend and see where it takes us. We'll get ready this week.
Absolutely. No, we appreciate having on the show. One more question we like to ask every athlete we bring on. What's been your favorite thing about being here at Ferris State and being a Bulldog?
Oh, there's a lot, but probably just being around the guys. We got a lot of different characters on our team. Give a little Blake Evano a shout out and Andrew Noel. So it's haven't met anything like it, and it's great to have, and can't say enough good things about them.
Very cool.
Noah, thank you so much for coming on the show. Good luck against Bemidji this upcoming week. Great job last week, and thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Huge thanks to Gies for stopping by the show. Certainly enjoyed talking to him. Just getting the whole vibe of how I honestly thought that Canadian hockey was a lot different than American hockey. Doesn't really sound like it's that much different.
Yeah, it's got similarities, it's got differences, but it's really cool to have that conversation with him and learn more about it. But Ferris State hockey, huge weekend wins over Bowling Green State over the weekend. 2-1 on Friday, 4-4 in OT, then winning it in the shootout, getting the 5 points on Saturday. That was huge. We're 1 point away from flipping the tables and getting home ice advantage in the playoffs. So the time is now. We talked about it last week, but man, this was a really good showing of the team really showing out and, getting gritty with it and really just pushing for a great win against a really tough Bowling Green team who at the start was really hot in the CCHA. They kind of fell down a little bit, started to get their foot back, but yeah, it was huge against a packed barn, they said.
Yeah, that was a huge weekend. Absolutely huge. I don't think people actually realized how big of a weekend that really was. And you could kind of feel it I thought Harrison and Brody really brought the emotion on the broadcast, which shout out to them for that. And
shout out to the fellas.
I think it was, especially in that Friday game, really, I thought we really played very well, dominated down the stretch when we needed to. Mm-hmm. And I think especially in the Bowling Green game for how just absolutely chaotic, crazy that game was. And especially the last 25 minutes going into the shootout, absolutely bonkers. The amount of just momentum driven each way. I mean, we had literally a goal going off of the other goaltender's shoulder pad going about 15 feet in the air and landing across the goal line. I mean, you never see that ever in any hockey, anywhere, any level, anytime.
We finally got like puck luck on our side for once.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. But I mean, how great has not only this whole team, but I mean, individually, Jason Branshaw in fuego right now. He's playing some of the hockey I've ever seen.
8-game point streak or something like that, right?
I think it's got to be close to
6 or 7, something like that.
6 to 8, somewhere in there.
That's wild.
He's pretty much been unstoppable. I mean, he started the scoring on Friday, added another one on a backhand on Saturday, and I think really you saw a lot of these other big lines, I thought, stepped up. I mean, especially some of the younger guys. Caden Galt really had a really good weekend. I mean, I think he had a point and an assist on Friday's game. He had a goal on Saturday's game. I thought his line especially played really well in that. I think they were registered on the third line, I want to say, or maybe the second line it was. But I thought they played really well. I thought really you saw the depth of the lines all playing extremely well. Because obviously we saw Venuto, Branshaw's line absolutely tearing it up. And then obviously Giesbrecht's been great between the pipes. But I think when you looked at how it was just completely the depth stepped up in a huge way, I think that really completely changed the whole momentum of this game. Because, I mean, it was really one of those situations where Minnesota State, we had one or two lines that were clicking. Some other two really just couldn't quite find a rhythm. But the depth shown that all 4 lines on the O side, and then obviously on the blue line side, all 3 really, I thought, came to play. And they really dominated the Falcons team, which they needed to do to get closer to Bemidji State. And now, only 1 point away.
Yeah, absolutely. We're at 30 points and Bemidji's at 31. So, I mean, a win and an overtime win or something like that can switch us there. It's going to be really interesting to see how the rest of the CCHA plays out. I don't think Northern St. Thomas or Lake State have a chance at home ice in this because they're at, I think Northern's are the most with 24.
Yeah, very minute.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically take a miracle. I think they have to like win out in the next, I think they'd have to get like 12 points and us and Bemidji to like somehow get no points, which isn't possible.
Yeah, especially since we're playing each other this weekend.
So somebody's going to get points this weekend. We'll see. But yeah, a big weekend sweep would be huge because that would give us a little bit of a cushion for next week upcoming since we only have, one more homestand? We're home, then away, then home.
Yep, home, away, home. We got Bemidji this weekend, which we'll get into how big that game is here in a second.
Sick.
Then we got Northern up at the Berry Center, and then we got Lake State Senior Day to finish out here at Inglegleben, which we know that we can beat a Lake State team and we can hopefully sweep them. So we're in the driver's seat. And I mean, especially this weekend on deck. And these are must-win games. We're 1 point behind the Beavers. They're coming to our place. We took care of business on the road. Well, I wouldn't say completely took care of business, but we did some damage. Yeah, we did. We split with them, did some damage. But boy, that would be huge to come out with a big time, at least one victory, hopefully getting at least 3. I mean, at this point, the way they played, you can expect 6. I think that's realistic, but I wouldn't necessarily want to jinx that. Obviously, I'll knock on the table right now, but I think the way that the offense has been playing, I think we're going to score some goals. I think if we lock down defensively,
clicking really well.
I think if we can keep the puck in our possession on the opposing half, I mean, that's going to be the biggest key to the game. Because when we do that, we're beating all these teams. When we're backed against our own ice, our own end, that's when we get into trouble.
I think, too, you might see, it's not going to be like crazy or anything, but I think the dog pound could get a little bit wild this weekend.
I think so.
Not like too crazy because obviously we've seen like when we think it's going to be packed and still means students just don't show up. I don't know why, because we're actually playing good and we're actually like putting goals up and we're giving a good show. It's just nobody shows up anymore, which is pretty annoying, but the chance of me getting better, I guess, a little bit. It's starting to kind of revive a little bit. I think some people are looking at the record and they're not 500. So people are like, why should we care? It's like, they're playing like a team that's literally 16 and like they're playing like a 16-5 type of team at some of these games. Like they're playing that well. It's just, then sometimes they play like a 6-15 team and they know that. And then we've talked to some of those guys and it's the consistency. I mean, they put the effort out each and every day, but a lot of the times puck luck, all of these things just don't come together. And that's really what's caused some of the losses this year. But I think that's made this team even stronger. I mean, we've looked at the last couple of games, obviously Minnesota State, a little bit of a punch in the mouth, but they're a really good team. But beating Bowling Green, going into a really big series with Bemidji. Then you got Northern, who's a team that we know we can beat. I think that's just going to bring a lot of real momentum in this weekend, and especially looking at the standings right now, Joe. I mean, we're in a really good spot. We're in the driver's seat almost at this point going into this series. Yeah, and the best part about it is, especially with the upcoming schedule this weekend, we have a little bit of a chance for Michigan Tech to do us a favor here against Bowling Green. If we able to get this weekend sweep, we'll be in a pretty good solid spot for next week as Michigan Tech's taking on Bowling Green. If they can sweep it there, it's 44 points overall for Michigan Tech, 38 for Bowling Green. If one of the two teams kind of slows up a little bit, that might be better for both of us because that might give a chance, especially next weekend. Even if we don't get the weekend sweep, we might be able to kind of get on a little bit more of a run again and still squeak into that home spot. But like we said, winning both of these games this week is going to be pretty crucial to be able to, get to that point of being able to have home ice because we haven't had home ice since 2012? 2013, 14?
It's been a long time, bro.
It's been a
long time.
Because I don't even think we had home ice when we won the CCHA in 2012.
Yeah.
I don't think we did.
I think it had to have been right.
Well, we might have been. Wait, no, we definitely did because we were like number one.
Yeah. That was the year right before, because we went to the Frozen Four in 14 or 12.
It was 12.
It was 12. Yeah, that's right. That would line up.
And then like 3 years later, we were like bottom of the table.
Yeah, pretty much. You can rise and fall. That's really what it has been. Crazy. But this weekend we're still on the rise, and you need to be there. It's Red Out February 11th. Silent auctions to support the Coldwell Health Cardiac Unit, benefiting women's heart health. All the teams will be wearing red. You should too. Red Out Wincan, the rink for basketball as well, which we'll get into here in a second. But I mean, it's a great cause for really. I mean, you've seen the awareness, especially. I mean, for some people probably that haven't quite seen it yet, there's going to be a video that's published. We talked to President Pink about this, and he's ready to rock this thing. Like, we're ready to pack the place, and you're going to want to be there. It's going to be fun. It's going to be an electric time. I mean, huge games huge games on deck this weekend. Obviously, Bemidji playing against us in hockey. And I mean, right now we got Wayne coming up on Thursday, but on Saturday, the nightcap going to be against Saginaw Valley, who's a really good team. So that's going to be really fun. So be sure to be there for Red Out, February 11th. I'll be there. Joe will be there. Everyone will be there wearing your red. So do so as well. And it's going to be a great weekend, Joe.
Absolutely, it's going to be. Cannot wait for it, man. It's going to be a blast. But hopping in now to men's basketball, they were in action over the weekend against Wisconsin Parkside and was it Purdue Northwest. So not the best thing. We're hoping for a two weekend swoop. I can't even talk right now, Brandon. I'm trying to speak before I even have a thought in my mind right now. But
it happens.
Yeah, it happens. How are you talking about it? Whatever it might be. Anyways, weekend split against Wisconsin Parkside and Purdue Northwest. Really was hoping to get one against Wisconsin Parkside, take lone sole possession of the top of the GLIAC. However, not looking like it right now. Wisconsin Parkside is just on too much of a heater here. But we were able to get the bounce back winning against Purdue Northwest, 85-75 on Saturday. I mean, we just did not play well on Friday or on Thursday. I mean, especially putting up 66 to what we're used to be able to put up. I just can't have that happen,
Bad game and a bad time. That's, I think, really what it went for both. I mean, Parkside's a good team on the women's side as well. I mean, really kind of starting with men's. Overall, you could just tell from the box score, shooting wasn't great. A lot of guys didn't. And I think the biggest thing was we didn't get a whole lot of opportunities, it felt like, to shoot the basketball. That was kind of the one thing that popped out to me, kind of looking at some comparisons of games that we've had already this season, kind of the compilation of the game logs. We had, I believe, 63 shots where there's been games. That's probably about the average mark we've had, between 60 and 65, 67. There's been games earlier this year where we've put up 70 shots. And I think I think it was Northern Michigan, we had 80 shots. So when you look at some of those games, it's not necessarily the lowest you could necessarily see, but it felt like we settled a little bit for 3-point shots. We had 27 of them. We had some open ones. No, don't get me wrong. But I think the biggest thing was really we had a really good run on the boards. And especially when you look at how this game ended up in comparison, that's pretty much an area that we fell off with a little bit. They out-rebounded us 37-32. And especially really kind of the points in the paint. They were controlling that. They were controlling the key. There was no question about it. They really did a great job down low, really kind of neutralizing us offensively and taking care of business defensively. And that's kind of really what kind of hurt us, especially down the stretch. They were able to penetrate. They were able to get inside. They were able to score in the post. And that really just kind of hurt us by the end of the day. It was just a bad game, though, at a bad time. That's really all you can say about it.
Yeah, but we were able to bounce back, have a pretty solid game against Purdue Northwest. Like I said, 85-75. The shooting was a little bit better, 10 for 20 overall on the threes. Ethan Erickson went 1 for 3, so not the best, but Ben Davidson and Delapo Olinki kind of picked it up too, with going 2 for 4 and 3 for 5 for them. But this is kind of what you want. I was kind of hoping for a weekend sweep to really make it going, but you still have a chance to, win out and, kind of put the pressure on Parkside to win out as well, because one bad game from either one of these teams means, somebody else is going to be able to take the regular season championship.
Yeah, and I think Bayes especially played really well. You saw it on the stat line. 12 points, 7 rebounds off the bench. I think he played really well. I think Delapo still played very well. I think he ended up with 14 points. I think really you saw... They didn't necessarily, I think, especially when you looked at the differences in games, when you looked at it on Thursday as opposed to Saturday, I think the biggest thing that came to mind, especially, is we mentioned the rebounds. Obviously, we mentioned the points in the paint. And I think when you look at those things, there's so much physicality that comes involved with that. But when you kind of look at the Purdue Northwest game a little bit, it kind of felt like it went like a different kind of style of game. And I think that kind of played into our favor necessarily of kind of getting out and running a little bit. And we kind of controlled the paint a little bit, but I thought really, especially you looked at being able to turn them over, 10 turnovers against them defensively. And that led to some much better offense. We were able to get some good looks. And I think especially, right from the jump, we got out to a little bit of a lead. And then they kind of came back a little bit, punched us in the mouth. And it kind of felt like it was kind of a little bit of a lull over. But then you looked at how we responded. I think especially at the end of the half, I think we came out as the better team going into halftime, and we really made that big run to put, I think, to us about 12. Even they kind of chipped away at it a little bit. I think they got it down to 8 before the break. But I think that response, especially in getting a lot of these good looks, being able to get down in the paint, ball movement, able to penetrate, kick out, good basketball. And that's what we saw especially. And I think that really kind of relates to the score line as well. You saw a lot more balance. You saw Solomon with 19. You saw Ben with 14, Dolapo with 14, Bass with 12, Amari with 9. Larry spread across, not necessarily somebody scoring 30 points, but it was a group effort all the way around. And I think that they played a lot better basketball. And I think that's going to make it a lot better for them going into this series, because I think it was a little bit of a wake-up call. And I think some good teams need that. And I think that one, especially on Thursday, might have caught them a little bit off guard after a big weekend, a big win over Northern. But now back to the driver's seat at home against Wayne and Saginaw. Hopefully they put those things to process and get 2 dubs.
And I like the switch up of like what coach did with the starters too, because I know, especially with Amari and Vance and Ethan all coming off the bench, as well as Reese, like how they kind of switched that up a little bit. Now putting Michael as the starting center and kind of letting him and Dolapo kind of do the work down low, and then Vance to be able to come off the bench and be able to have that type of presence. It's pretty threatening for a lot of these teams that, are struggling with those two, because I feel like Veas has a lot different skill set from both of those guys. He can still fill it up from the arc, but when he's down low, he's very methodical. He's very, playing to his strengths. And when he comes off the bench, not a lot of teams are ready for that. And when you can have that continuous onslaught, that's going to be really valuable, especially coming up pretty soon with GLIAC tournament.
Yeah, now we'll go over to the GLIAC scoreboard here in just a second. But I think when you look at a lot of these teams now, we're going into the second half of these stretches, which are absolutely huge, because I think especially on the men's side, Parkside able to beat us on Thursday. Oh, they almost slipped up on Saturday against Lake State. And I think you're going to see that a lot down the stretch now, because you got guys, especially, I think the health game is just as important with a lot of these other teams. You got guys banged up, you got guys injured, and are you able to really get it to go the second time around? You're going to be a little bit more cautious, right? Because obviously you're playing for regular season prominence, but at the end of the day, you want to play your best in March. So you're going to be resting a couple guys. So I wouldn't be surprised necessarily if you see a Davenport type team give a Lake State and Northern Michigan run to their money and potentially beat them.
Hey, that's what we saw. That's what we saw last year. Davenport was last in the league at the regular season. Then they went and won the GLIAC championship. Yeah,
they came as the Cinderella. They were the 8 seed and they ran the whole thing. And it's just like, yep, that's the way it goes. You just got to click at the right time. And that's what comes down to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So GLIAC Sports Report, or GLIAC Scores Report, Saginaw Valley's made the trip up to Northern Michigan, but they weren't able to get the win. 64-81 loss to the Wildcats. Michigan Tech got the win over Wayne State and a big one, 78-58. That was a much needed win for them, being near the bottom of the table, and Wayne State kind of right above them. Lake Superior State got the win over in Purdue Northwest, 71-67. And then going to Saturday, Wayne State and Northern Michigan faced off at 63-58 win for the Wildcats there. So weekend sweep for them. Grand Valley got the win over Davenport, 87-61. Saginaw Valley not winning at all this weekend. Tough for them. 75-67 loss to the Huskies of Michigan Tech. And then Lake State and Parkside ended out the weekend recap 82-79 in favor of Parkside.
Oh, if Lake State would have won that game, that would have been huge for us. But anyway, that would have put, I believe, 4 teams then at 9-4. Would have put Northern, Parkside, Lake State, no, it's all at 9-4.
We would have been back to the 4 teams tied for first.
Yeah, and we would have had the edge with the 18-6 record. But hey, it happens. So now we got to do the hard work, and it needs your help. So be there. Thursday's games, I believe, tipping off at 7:30 for the men, 3:00 on Saturday. And we'll get to the women's here. That will take place 2 hours prior to that. A little bit of a tough weekend. I thought really I think we battled very, very well in the fourth quarter. I think especially, the reserves, really came out and showed a lot of good things. The unfortunate thing is we really kind of got off to a slow start. And I think that really kind of hurt us as the game went on. I think that it's really hard when you look at a lot of these great scores that Parkside has, and it's really hard to defend against them, just because when you have a multitude of scores, you can't necessarily run these concrete sets. You can't run a full box in one kind of vibe. You have to be pretty cautious all the way around the perimeter. And I think they really showed it. They got out to I think it was a 15-4 run early on in the game. And really that was the deficit held to the very end. I thought the team battled really well, but I think it comes down to what we talked in the pregame, Joe, or the preview, I should say, last week. We just haven't been able to shoot the ball on the road very well this year. And I think that's really been the biggest thing that's kind of hurt us a little bit. Cause 35% from the floor, 16 from 3. Not going to win a game that often when you have those kind of lines, but I think we did a pretty good job taking care of the basketball. We only had 8 turnovers, which is very, very positive. I think the bench wasn't necessarily as active, but I think that's just kind of the way the whole game went, obviously. But I mean, Grace Sullivan getting the start in this game, and I thought that was a really interesting change that coach made, I think. And I think when you look at it too, especially with the multitude, we just mentioned like the multitude of injuries. I think when you look at how a lot of these other teams line up, I think when you don't have somebody like Deshauna Day that can really lock down a player like Alyssa Nelson, then that really kind of puts you in a little bit of a hole, because I think that we have a lot of great perimeter defenders, but one-on-one, Deshauna Day is one of the best. And I think without her, I mean, Alyssa Nelson was really able to force a lot of shots and be able to make them. She had 17 points, but Gelasova had 21 as well. She played a really good game. But I think it really, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but bad game at a bad time. That's really all you could say, because you watched it and you're just like, yeah, this team is just in a little bit of a slump right now. And it was just for that game. And it's just one of those, you know, hey, it happens, move on, take the best, we'll lose the worst. And now you go into this next week and you got to learn from it.
Yeah, weirdly enough, last time I played Wisconsin Parkside, it was almost identical score to last weekend.
Was it
was
really?
75-66 on January 14, and we lost that one. And then on February 2 last weekend, 79-66.
Huh.
So like a difference of 4 points. It's wild.
Weird how that goes. But especially comparing that to Saturday's game against Purdue, obviously had a little bit of confidence going against Purdue. They're not necessarily as tough of a team as Parkside, play a little bit different kind of basketball. But I think definitely you saw them really get out to a hot start, which was very good. I'm not necessarily saying right from the jump, because it was really, when you looked at it, not necessarily like got out to a huge, ginormous lead or anything like that. Like they were still, the Pride were still hanging around a little bit. But I think just the overall resiliency of this team, I think really kind of showed, because I mean, we got out to a little bit of a run at the beginning of the game, and I think we settled in a lot nicer than Parkside. I felt like we kind of really dealt with a punch, and now we're trying to run and chase all the way back, and it really just drug out to the whole rest of the game. Yeah. But in this case, I mean, we really kind of kept fighting, kept battling. They kept trying to punch back. You know, Dash Shaw's a good player, really trying to get her momentum going. But I think we did a good job of neutralizing her. And I think we still played a very solid basketball game. And I think really with the circumstances, I mean, Shaw was able to get 28, but you neutralized everybody else. And that was what was the key thing. And we really had a great scoring across the board. Mallory had a really good game, 21 points. Kenzie had 20. Chloe had 17. And I think that depth really kind of showed going, because I think Mia had to play more minutes as well. Maka had to play more minutes, and I think you saw them really produce off the bench as well. And I think that when you look at this team's offense, it can be a little varying, but their defensive effort, I thought, is really improved from last year, Joe, especially. And I think obviously that it's going to be even better, I think, down the stretch, because we're still kind of learning and really kind of getting a little bit to our true identity as a team, because it's kind of fluctuated a little more defensive heavy, a little bit as of recently. We're more kind of offensive heavy at the beginning of the year. And now they're kind of starting to find a mix of the two. And I think when you find that, it's going to be a deadly combo going into the GLIAC tournament here in this upcoming March.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of GLIAC, we'll get into the scores from last weekend. For the women's side, same exact thing. Michigan Tech beat Wayne State when they traveled to town, 80-70 win for them. Purdue Northwest got the win on the first day on a final OT thriller for them, 90-85 over Lake State, but obviously got the weekend split because they didn't win against us. Saginaw Valley won 46-43 over Northern Michigan, and then moving to Saturday, Grand Valley won 68-46 against Davenport. Wayne State getting the win, 69-64, close one over Northern Michigan in regular time. Michigan Tech beat Saginaw Valley 69-49 in a 20-point blowout, and then Lake State fell to Parkside in an even bigger blowout, 109-68.
Whoa. They put up 109.
Jeez. Why did Grand Valley only play one game this week?
I don't know. That's interesting.
Or last week.
But 109?
Jeez, man.
Did they shoot over 50% or
Let's
like
check
that?
The old box score.
That's crazy. I didn't see that until just now. I kind of saw some of the news. Shot
15 for 24.
Oh, yeah. That's 62.5% right there.
And 36 for 58. They shot the lights out the building.
That I wish I had a shock sound effect because I'd play it right now. But if that's how it feels in my head. It's 109 points. Well, that shows you how good of a team they are in a nutshell. They can put up triple digits. You don't see that too many often from the women's teams, but hey, I guess kudos to them for being able to score the basketball. My goodness. But still split over the weekend, cross the pond, obviously a hard road trip. Yeah. Obviously they're not going to make that excuse, but being able to really adjust to opposing rims is really the biggest takeaway you can get from this, because we adjusted at Purdue a lot better than we did at Parkside, and hopefully we can do that for some of these other road games, because we got a couple big ones here coming up the second half of the year as well. But anyway, women's will be in action 5:30 on Thursday, as well as 1 o'clock on Saturday with men's games to follow, and especially on Saturday with hockey going to be finishing up afterwards at a 6:07 puck drop for Red Out. Anyway, final sport we got here, tennis. We didn't preview it as much as we would like to on our Thursday show, a little crammed for time, but obviously now being able to recap. Win against Northwood in their opener on Saturday, February 4th, and really clean sweep fashion, especially on the men's side, 7-0. I believe that the women also took care of business. It wasn't necessarily as sweep of a scoring line, a little closer at 4-3, but then took on a really good indie team that really you can show how good of a regional team they are, being able to beat our men and women. But getting out there, being able to dust the rust off, obviously is the biggest takeaway you have from this game. But I think especially on the men's side, I think you saw, obviously we have Yannick Madur, Jan Kapul's back. You got Benjamin Lordy, San Angelo is back, but I think you saw Eric Kovacs play really well. I think that he's the guy that really, when you looked at going into the season, you didn't really know quite off the top of your head, because obviously we had Matisse, who's the number one player in the GLIAC, obviously player of the year. But now you got a new guy, number one, and I think that was obviously with the matchups. Obviously, it's not necessarily ranking 1 through 7. It's obviously matchup dependent. You're trying to get the most strategic lineups. But I think you saw him play really well, and especially on the women's side, I think you really saw, really it came down to the fact of, we won after coming back. I think we lost the doubles point early on. Yeah, we lost the doubles point. We were able to fight our way back with 4 singles wins. That shows the resiliency of this team. And I think especially, Sophie at the number 1 spot in the number 1 pairing played really well, sweep sets. And then we kind of fell into a little bit hole at 2 and 3. But I think really the back half, Kennedy Dumas, Mariana Hernandez, as well as Laverde, Amelia Laverde. I don't know why I said that backwards. It's written down in the backwards on here. I don't know why I read it that way. But being able to get those in 2 sets, I think was absolutely huge. And the other sets we lost in 3 sets. So that just shows the fight in this team already. Obviously a good indie team, and especially on a back-to-back, playing a team fresh as opposed to after a hard day of competition is obviously different. But I think these 2 teams, especially, will make their case right now early in the season. It's a little bit hard to tell, but I think you can definitely tell from years past and really the great work that you've seen from Coach Doran's teams. They're going to be in the regional rankings. They're going to be a team that's going to be contending. And I think the depth is always there year after year. And I think this is a really one prime example early in the season where they've already started to show it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw this too. Last year we had a couple of really tough matches at the start. I think we had to play, 2 or 3 ranked opponents at the start. And I think we got an upset against 1, but we still were able to have a really solid start. Especially when you look at, facing up against Northwood, who was a GLIAC team last year, not this year, but you're able to do business against them, but you're still able to hang in there with Indianapolis. Especially when you're talking, especially when you look at the recap and you see what Coach Doran was saying. The energy was there, and everybody was really playing really on point, but it was just a grudge match basically the whole time. You just had to really put your head down and get it done. But ultimately you fall to them. But other than that, you look at it, you got to take away the wins of the day, I guess. And that's just, you come out with great energy, you play really solid. It's just unfortunate that you got to play a team that's just a little bit better. And that's just all it is.
Yeah, being able to beat Northwood, I think, was a big testament. I think Coach Doran said it in the post game, especially. I think Northern was a team. I think that actually won the GLIAC the final year, or they were up somewhere, or maybe where was it? Maybe I was reading the Indy one. Maybe that's what it was. But no, yeah, you had it just on the screen there for a second there. It was, I can't see it now, but I think there was something with, it was an outstanding win over the defending league champions. And that was talking about the doubles match against Northwood. So I think that was one of I don't remember them winning it, but that's still, if it was, so maybe we'll have to fact check that. But overall, regardless, GLIAC champions are just playing an exhibition. A win is a win. And you get to see the depth that your team has. And I think that's going to be really good to have a good start. And I think we will see that, especially, 2 more matches coming up this weekend. I believe the women's play Friday, Sunday. Men's play Friday, Saturday. A little bit of a weird pairing there over at the Racket Center. They'll all be home though, so you can go check them out. Hillsdale, I believe, on the road for men's, followed by Saturday against Findlay, which is at home. While on the women's side, a little bit different of a schedule as just mentioned. They'll be taking on Findlay on Sunday at home, while they'll be traveling to Hillsdale on Friday. So no Friday, but home Saturday and Sunday. Men's on Saturday and women's on Sunday. So go over and watch tennis, go support, and then you can come over to Redout. It works out the whole way. You just got to go to Redout.
Yeah,
we're just gonna beat the dead horse all week.
Say, hey, come to Redout,
guys. Please come to Redout. It's gonna be fun. I think it's gonna be fun. So anyway, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, Kyrie's now a Maverick, and some people aren't happy. We'll give our thoughts after this.
The MBSP is proud to partner with the people of Eagle Village Incorporated. With over 50 years of experience helping and changing the lives of youth, there are opportunities for you to be the next to make a direct impact, including plenty of positions available, including summer staff, internships, and more. For more information, visit eaglevillage.org. Eagle Village, where potential soars.
Back to finish out the show. Haven't covered NBA in a while. We talked about it a little bit last week, or alluded to it, I should say. But a lot of big news. Kyrie Irving is now Dallas Maverick in a trade with Brooklyn to send him with Luka Doncic. There's some other rumors going around, but I think the biggest thing people are wondering, Joe, if Kyrie Irving now is in with Luka Doncic in that backcourt, are the Mavs legitimate contenders, or are they looking like star-studded pretenders?
I think if Kyrie plays, then yeah. But I think the good thing though is like you're in Texas, which the rule like, because I mean, especially for Kyrie before, like he was always like iffy if he was going to play, you know, especially like with the whole COVID thing going down as well, just like every other weird thing that he does now. And I mean, especially with Kyrie, like he was a guy who was like every time he gets traded, it's like he shows out for like a month and he's like, yeah, like money is worth it. And then something happens, whether it's like a contract, whatever it might be. And then it's just like, oh, he's going to sit out half the season or something like that, or he gets injured or whatever. And then he's just going to ask for a huge contract or something like that, gets the contract, and then just like plays halfway. Like we really haven't seen him like at the caliber that like we know he's able to play ever since like 2016 when he was with the Cavs and LeBron. And then once that kind of went away and he got traded to the Celtics, like I feel like that Celtics trade was like the downfall, because we have not seen him play good at all. So if he's able to actually get a situation now where he's like happy and will play throughout the whole year, yeah, the Mavs are definitely contenders, because already with Luka, you're seeing a incredible team. And then you add Kyrie to it. It's just if they're going to be able to gel. The worst part about it though is he's not going to LA, which I thought was going to happen because I feel like he wanted to have that reunion with LeBron. But then again, we were talking about it off air. I think the owner was just like, nope, that ain't going to happen. You took $300 million away from me. I'm gonna make sure that you're not gonna go where you want to go.
Yeah, that was such a weird time to come out with that, because now everyone's like, whoa, what? Are you really trying to be that guy? But I think in that situation, I mean, after what they had dealt with Kyrie for all that time, it makes sense. I mean, I would kind of be a little sick of that too. And I'm not necessarily saying throwing anything shade against Kyrie, for example. But I think with just the hoops and all the logs they had to jump over for him to play, I think was pretty stressful, especially with the team. I mean, it was like, especially, I was watching the Dion 30 for 30 double play with my roommates the other night. And I think it kind of correlates with this. Like if you were a manager, if you were Bobby Cox, for example, for the Braves, and if you are obviously in the position of being in, as a head coach in any organization whatsoever, and you're playing for a championship, the last thing that you want to worry about at all, the last thing that you would want to worry about is who's going to play and who's not going to play.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know who's playing, you know, like I don't want to have to question if one guy is going to show up and say, yeah, you know what, coach, I don't feel like playing today. What do you mean you're not ready to play today? Like, that's not necessarily the mentality that you want to have, one, but obviously he had different reasons for what. But I mean, I think if you're Coach Vaughn in this situation, like I think you might feel yourself a little bit better now. Like you have a little bit more, I think you have a little bit more of a good feeling of who you have really kind of committed to the team. But I mean, now you have a situation now with Kevin Durant where it could be a matter of time before he wants out, because this whole thing was kind of orchestrated together to get him and Kyrie there together, win a championship for Brooklyn together. And then they add James to the mix and then Ben Simmons. And now it's all just kind of blown up in their face. So what do you think, how do you think he feels? Because he was one that started this whole thing.
Yeah.
And now that's why we're talking about him on February 6th now as a potential guy that's, he's going to be on the trade market. No question about it.
Yeah.
And it's KD.
It's I would hate to be a Nets fan right now. To be able to because here's the thing. I don't think there's ever been a spot like as a Pistons fan where I'm just like, yeah, this is like, we're going to win a chip because of this trade. And then it's like, wow, that just like blew up in our face. Like that team should have won at the year after that got put together, that team should have won 2 out of 3 years or something like that, to see how much star-studded talent you have on it. Because you have KD, who's arguably the best scorer or the best player in the whole league right now. He's a lethal shooter. He can score from anywhere. You have Kyrie, who I still think has the best handles in the whole league. You have Ben Simmons, who's just kind of there. I guess he's a guy. He's a driver. Glue guy. Yeah. He's a driver. He's like the slasher or whatever. And then you got James Harden, who just can do 3 step backs and draining a 3 in your face.
Yeah.
Won't get called for it. But that team should have been able to do incredible damage, especially in an Eastern Conference that was so depleted.
Ugh, horrible.
That was almost guaranteed to go to the finals each year. Because who do you gotta go through in the East? The Bucks?
Basically the Bucks, the Celtics, and insert any other hot team after that, whether it's, really it's the Celtics and the Bucks.
The Celtics, and maybe the Heat.
You would argue some years it's the Heat, some years it's the Sixers, then maybe there's another hot team like the Raptors was a couple of years ago, but not much.
You have 3. You have 3 teams that you have to be able to play better than, and you're not going to be facing all 3 of those teams through each round of the playoffs. There's no shot. So realistically, you only got to beat 2. However, now you got the whole COVID vaccine thing go down where Irving's not going to take it. And then that just goes wildly out of proportion. Just now it's blew up in everybody's faces. And then now you got him basically as public enemy number 1 in the NBA right now.
Yeah. It's a tough situation. I think when we look at the standings right now, Celtics, Bucks, Sixers, Nets, Cavs, Heat, Knicks, Hawks, top 8. Bulls are 1 game out from the Hawks, between 8 and 9. But I think when you see how this whole thing is shaken out, I think really if you're the Mavs, I think overall, I think Brooklyn might have technically won the trade, because long-term consideration of value, I think you would look at where Dallas is, and they're in a win now mentality. And I think if you're the Mavs, I think this is a good trade in that sense, because
it's a good trade.
You look at where Kyrie is at. You know what he brings to the table. You know that I would hope they have discussed this with Luka at some point. Because if you're going to...
Cuban loves the guy. There's no shot that he was just sprung it on him.
No. That would be a little bit detrimental if they didn't. But I think that they did, and I'm sure they probably had their due diligence of talking with him, and I think that it really kind of worked itself out, and he's accepted this. Because I think the biggest thing that some people are consideration, because adding Kyrie to that roster makes that a really good team. You have Luka there, and now you have Kyrie. It's a very flexible backcourt, very flexible. The really only consideration is now you have one basketball. That's the bottom line with any super team you put together is one basketball. How are players going to play off the ball when either of them doesn't have it? That's the biggest thing, is because Kyrie's he's a big volume guy. Obviously, he's played with KD and Harden now, and he's kind of adapted that lower volume, more quality kind of game. And you're able to see the plus minus over a lot of some of these games. But then other nights where it kind of gets a little toxic, it's a 5-point game in the fourth quarter. Who wants the ball? 3 hands go up. I don't know.
That's the one bad
problem.
That's the one bad thing about having so many big names and stuff like that. And especially now that you have Luka, who's been solidified as the guy. You have Kyrie come in. Is he going to be able to take that backseat role? Because he did it with LeBron, but he still was young, very young in his career. He made a little bit of a name for himself, because I think he made the playoffs his first or second year with the Cavs.
Something like that.
After LeBron left. So it was still like, okay, we like this guy, but he's still very young. And then you have LeBron, who's the undisputed go to bat. Like you can say undisputed. I don't know why I said undisputed go, because I don't even think he's the go to basketball. But
He's like,
whoa. At the time, right now, he's LeBron, So you have that, but you go into now where Kyrie's like solidified himself as he's won a championship before. If he wants to, he can take over a game. But also Luka's the same way. So what are you going to do there? And I don't think Kyrie has the personality or the humility to be able to go into that situation and say, all right, yeah, that's fine. Like I'll take the back seat. Like if you give me the ball, I'll do work. But if you want the ball, I'll hand it off. I don't think that's going to be able to work. So it might take like a year to kind of work that out. But especially now that I think he's going to be a free agent in the summer with how the contract works out. Because they're only giving like $80 million right now for 2 years, I think, right? Because it's like an extension.
I think
something like that.
Might be a little lower, but yeah, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, they were only limited to offer him a 2-year, $80 million extension, which is way under his like value, obviously, because he's going to probably ask for near $300 million once his actual contract comes around. But I don't know if they're going to be willing to shell out that money, especially because how much are they paying for Luka right now?
Pretty high.
Yeah.
I think last time I checked with his contract, I think he is making somewhere north of about $8 million, I want to say, last year. But then he had that big 5-year, $207 million extension. So that puts him at somewhere just about, like probably, what is that, 41, 42, somewhere in there he's getting per year. So, but technically, I think that's his salary is technically probably somewhere around 37, 38, obviously with the extra additives on top of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, especially for them in consideration of the Western Conference, I mean, they're in the 6th spot right now. So you're not necessarily in a bad spot. I mean, I think they're definitely feeling a little bit of urgency for the way Luka's played. You don't obviously want to miss the playoffs with the way Luka's played, because that's going to make him a little unagitated, and obviously you're going to have to start dealing with that sort of stuff. But I think when you look at it in the whole perspective of where each team is at, I think with Brooklyn, I mean, there's just been a lot of toxicity with how that thing has went down. And I think now the ownership's like, yeah, we just want to start over. It was a good idea, but now we kind of want to start over. And it is tough. It's because now you had 3 superstars and you're like, how did we not win with these guys? Like, it is crazy to think about that, the amount of talent, amount of MVP candidacies, amount of awards, amount of fantastic abilities and times to win championships with those 3 guys. And they frankly weren't close. They weren't close. I mean, they got to the semis 2 years ago. And they were all hurt by the time that they'd gotten there. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, really, that's been the biggest thing, is they haven't been on the floor enough together when they were all 3 together. So, because they were they only played 11 games.
You can't even build the chemistry with that.
Right, when they're not on the floor together. So I think they're finally just trying to blow it up, and obviously don't know as much about the whole situation, because I haven't followed the NBA as a whole and as in depth as a lot of these other guys have. But I think when it comes down to it, I think now you see the Nets start to realize what they need to do. They need to kind of start tearing it down a little bit, take a step back and start to build it I wouldn't necessarily say it the right way, because I wouldn't phrase it like that, but start to build it the regular way, start to look at players, and they got some good packaging players, obviously with Dinwiddie, and they can do whatever they want with Dinwiddie and those guys, if they keep them or they try to trade them and try to build up from the ground up again. But I think if you're the Mavs, I think it's a win. I think it's a win-win trade. I think either way. So obviously some people will say that there should have been an extra additive with the Kyrie trade to make it a little bit more flattened. But I mean, I think both teams are happy with this deal.
I think the reason, if this works out, the sole reason, or one of the probably 90% of the reason that this would work out, is because of Mark Cuban. Because he is a guy who I think can really get his players to play for him. And like, he's actually like an owner that's like invested in the team, which you don't really see a lot of owners be able to do that. And I think now if you come in, he'll actually be able to like talk to Kyrie and kind of like put a little bit of a word in, because he's an influential guy. Like, if you've seen him and his players and stuff like that, like, he's able to get them to play for him, which not a lot of owners are able to do. And he's kind of, I have a feeling he's like the shadow GM, kind of, as they say. But yeah, I think Cuban's going to be playing a pretty pivotal role if this whole trade is going to work out, because if not, I mean, that's going to be tough, because you're going to be spending like $80 million for the rest of the season, and you're going to try to shell out. But like, everybody knows that this is not the place that Kyrie wanted to go to. Kyrie wanted to go to Lakers, play with LeBron and all that stuff. But now you have a shot now where you're in a new spot with a team that's playoff contenders and a championship contending team. I mean, what more could you want? Now you got a great owner. I feel like this could work out, but it's going to take a lot of people, because I don't know if Kyrie has the personality to kind of come into a spot and know his place, that he's not number one there.
We'll see. It'll be interesting. They'll be chasing the Nuggets, Grizzlies, Kings, Clippers, and Suns. Yeah, you did hear that correctly. The Kings are playing good basketball, believe it or not. They're actually making a run up here with Sabonis in that company. So they're ending up winning that trade that we thought was absolutely crazy for Sabonis a little while back. Turns out they've been playing some pretty good basketball. Yeah. But anyway, some other teams here to watch kind of going into the trade deadline. And I saw this one report this morning. Remember back when KD was originally making a decision, and he was reportedly seeking a potential trade when, obviously all the Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving, James Harden stuff was starting to get crazy, and he was starting to look at other options. Remember that Phoenix was in that conversation?
Yeah.
Phoenix is one game up on Dallas. Could you imagine?
Really?
Or I shouldn't say one game, one spot above Dallas. I think technically they're like half game.
Yeah, it's 20. They're 29, 26 overall. Mavs are 28 and 26.
Could you imagine the Suns getting a deal together to bring KD with Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, and those guys in Phoenix?
Jeez.
That would be a move that I think I've heard some people talk about, and I've seen some reports about it. And to be honest, I mean, I think that could be potentially a blockbuster move. And I think that
that could rival the when KD went to Golden State. Because KD, I feel like, could fit in any program.
Yeah.
Any franchise.
I would assume so. I think the craziest thing would be, I think the Suns wanted to offer for Kyrie at one point, and the deal involved swapping over Chris Paul. And I would feel bad for Chris Paul, because Chris Paul's been dealt to some bad situations and has made the best of it. I mean, when he went to Houston, and obviously him and James had a couple of the years in the playoffs, but like originally he was not happy to be going to Houston after the OKC deal. And all that sort of stuff. Got dealt to OKC when he didn't want to. Kind of built that thing up a little bit. And then obviously now in the Sun situation, he was a little bit more happier. And obviously you see the prominence they had, and especially could have made a legitimate run if they didn't run into a mad Luka Doncic last year. But I think you still have a really good situation there. And I mean, if they could pair Chris Paul and Kevin Durant together, that could be a really interesting combo. I don't know how the dynamic would go with those two. Not totally sure about the relationship they have, but I think when you look at it, I think there's a couple teams else that you can watch out for, especially on the trade block. I mean, I think the Clippers are one of those teams where you're like, yeah, they're in the playoffs, but we have no idea how far this team's going. Like they're like, you have obviously Kawhi and Paul George. These guys have been banged up a lot. You see the depth kind of showing out a little bit, but they got a lot of role players that I think some other teams potentially, especially other role playing needing teams, like that need that depth. And you can see guys like Luke Kennard will probably be on the block, Reggie Jackson, ironically former Pistons, all of them. You can see how that franchise was going. But I think you can see a team like the Clippers potentially. And I think you can start seeing some of these other teams might be potentially looking at rebuilding for how bad that they've been. I mean, the Spurs are the second to last team in the league right now. So, I mean, that's not great if you're a Greg Popovich team. So now what is their journey now going to look like? What's their path to rebuilding this team? We don't know. So, and I mean, especially the Raptors, that was a team that we were just mentioning is a team that was really good. They're 25-30 right now, and they're in 12th place in the division. They should be a team that should be up in the playoff conversation. So what are they going to try to do to fix that? Are they going to move on, or are they going to try to bring in team guys themselves to try to fix that thing around? I don't know. So I think those are some interesting teams to watch. I don't know necessarily any particular players, I would say, that would probably be we know we're going to get traded. I think there's only probably one that really rings off the top of my head, especially as a Pistons fan. I think you got to say Bogdanovich is out of there, potentially to probably a West Coast team that needs a little bit more shooting. But I think it'll be interesting to see over the trade deadline. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what some of these teams are going to do. And I think it's a lot. I was talking to one of my friends, Keith Richards, who we had on the show a real while back. And that episode's in the feed. You can find it somewhere, but we were talking about how the depth of the NBA feels like it's so much closer and narrower than it ever has been, because a couple of years ago, we had like the runaway teams, obviously Golden State setting the regular season record for wins. You had the big three with Miami. And you had a lot of these teams that you were just like, yeah, these teams are so good. They're going to win the chip. And now you're like, oh yeah, we have the Celtics, Bucks, Sixers, all a couple games from each other. They're okay. They'll probably beat each other 5 out of 10 times each the whole year. Then you have the Nuggets and the Clippers and a lot of these other teams that you're like, yeah, they're pretty, and the Suns too, where you're like, yeah, they'll probably, like, it doesn't feel like there's any clear-cut favorites anymore, which is very interesting.
Yeah, that's the one thing too, is like, especially with the NBA now, it's kind of gotten a little bit more lucrative because like a lot of these superstars that we grew up watching have kind of gotten to a point now where like they can still take over, but it's not as like evident that one guy is going to go crazy, you know? Because I mean, like with Chris Paul with the Clippers back in the day, like he could take over. LeBron still could, but he's definitely kind of laid back in his role a little bit from like actually going wild every once in a while. I mean, KD and Russ on the Thunder were just wild. Now you see them now and they're pretty well past their primes. KD is still kicking it around and actually being able to play good, but Russell Westbrook has now gotten to a point where it's just like, I mean, you're good, but like you're not really worth like the actual like franchise player contract. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting because now you're seeing a lot. You've seen the NBA evolve now and do more of a team sport, which is weird because it always has been. But you've seen, I mean, every decade, there's always like 2 or 3 teams that just have one guy that's able to go crazy. But now I can't really put my finger on like a team that has one guy rather than like the actual team like playing really solid.
Yeah, the Lakers with LeBron. Oh, wait, they're 25-29. That's not going to work.
Even like the Grizzlies, like with Ja, like he's like their main guy, but like, I still can't.
I mean, they're a 2 seed.
They're still a 2 seed, but it's not just because of Ja. Like they're playing really well as a team.
Yeah, they actually have an orchestrated team around. It's not just hand plucking the supposedly best players around you, like the Lakers.
Look at the Kings. Their team is going wild right now because they're playing as a team.
Perfect.
They're lighting the beam.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Same with the Suns. I mean, I don't really know who's on the Timberwolves, to be honest.
Like you got Ant, you got Cat, you got Rudy Gobert. They made the weird.
Oh, I forgot that he was on there now too.
Yeah, that wild trade, and it's starting to look a little interesting now. But I mean, Minnesota looks like a team that could be pretty interesting to play against going into the postseason. But I mean, then you got the Warriors at 9 without Steph. How are they going to make a run? We'll have to wait and see. But Jordan Poole, fill it, baby. As a former Michigan fan, I like seeing him play really well because I love the fact that he's like, yeah. Everybody hated me on draft night for getting drafted. Now look where I am.
Yeah, now he's like the actual like third Splash brother, almost, people are saying.
I would say, yeah. He's probably in that conversation for sure.
Bona fide stud.
Absolutely. Anyway, we got to get out of here. Thank you all for tuning in to this show. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as WBRN on these future weekend episodes. It's going to be super fun to get those on there. Can't wait to do so and bring you guys the best to come on Saturdays at 1 o'clock. If that changes, we'll let you know. Don't worry. Still some details in the works. We're getting that all figured out. But it's going to be fun to get you guys the best content moving forward. But until next time, signing off.
Take care, everybody.